All the way around the room, we have the heaviest hitting libertarians in Austin. There's Scott Horton, Patrick Sovereign, Jason Pratt, Arlo Pignotti, and Gabo Delasumthin. All in the booth. Say hello, guys.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
All right. This is the reason. Okay, there's the first question. We're going to go around the room. You must be as honest as possible, because I can hear little scratches. Don't touch the mic. All right. You must be as honest as possible about this question. Okay, and here's the hypothetical. You're in a locked room. There's a gun to your head. You have a choice. You can vote for George Bush, or you can vote for John Kerry. Suicide is not an option.
Darn.
So.
How about attempting to grab the gun and reverse the situation?
Oh, come on, guys.
Is that not an option? Oh, that's not an option.
You know, you're not going to be able to.
Okay, I'm taking the fun out of it.
Okay.
So.
You're not going to grab.
Weapon? Is that what it is?
All right. If you guys on mic 3 would move in just a little closer, we're going to start with Scott.
I would have to say John Kerry because he's not the incumbent.
All right.
And I think that every president should be fired after 4 years until we can go ahead and repeal Article 2 out of the Constitution and have no president at all. But until then, we ought to fire every one of them that we hire after their first term. Or, in fact, even impeach them and get them out sooner than that if possible.
Nick?
I can't vote for either of them. It only encourages them.
So you'd rather be dead?
Well, I'll take my chances if the gun is empty.
Jesus. No, come on. You know, you got a choice, man. It's your life here. This is your life. You can't. Is it that painful a decision?
There's no difference between the two of them.
So there's no way you're going to get out of this situation alive. You'd rather be dead than make a choice. Or
well, I'd rather
be not a choice.
Well, I'd rather be free than a slave, so yeah.
You'd rather be dead?
Yeah, I guess if it means, turning my life over to somebody else, then yeah.
Wow. Jason?
I like the first answer, the vote out the incumbent, but I would say that I would just flip a coin and just whatever. Heads, Bush, tails, Kerry. That way it's not in my hands.
Okay. Arlo?
Well, I would stall. I like the idea of flipping the coin. I'd flip the silver liberty, but, I think I would vote against whoever's in power currently. Just might as well get the idea out there that we want them out, not so much that we want one of their guys in.
Gabo?
Well, the reality is you're giving me a choice between do I want brain cancer or do I want a heart attack? So I think the most logical explanation for this is to go and say, well, the incumbent, that makes the most logical sense. Because the lesser of two evils is still evil. And they're both cousins. They're both from the Skull and Bones. They're both from the secret elite society at Yale. And we don't really have a choice. The game is rigged, as like Terry Liberty Parker likes to say. The game is rigged.
All right, here's the next question. And this one's more of like a trivia question. Name one major foreign policy difference between the two candidates.
I think Kerry wants to internationalize American empire more than the Republicans do. And he wants to make sure that the Russians and the French and the Germans have to pay their fair share of dead bodies and dollars to expand world hegemony, is that what they call it? Mm-hmm. Benevolent global hegemony.
I mean, I don't see the difference between the two of them. I mean, they're both for, war, period. I mean, just outright war against the rest of the world. I guess there's means to that end, like he was talking about, but it's still the same goal.
Jason?
I think the only difference, I've been thinking about it, the only difference is that, as far as I know, Kerry's father never puked on the Japanese prime minister. I think that's really the only difference between the two.
The only difference I've noticed is from John Kerry, where he says he's going to give our soldiers high-tech body armor. He says that all the time, so I guess he wants to have Iraq the expansion pack, as far as I can tell. So as far as foreign policy, apparently the Bushes are better, because he just wants to spend even more money on it.
I respectfully disagree with all of you. I think there is a significant difference in that Bush is for globalism and Kerry's for internationalism. And that is a significant difference.
All right. Okay. Let me ask you this. And I've asked you all this question in different forms before. But let's go more seriously. You're now playing policy analyst and campaigner at the same time. If you could give Michael Badnarik one piece of advice on how he could break 1%, which the Libertarian Party has not done since 1980, Okay, break 1%. And keep in mind that we're nowhere close to that right now. We're no way close to anywhere near 1% because this election is so contentious. But how would you do that, and why?
I'd say focus on the war, and if it doesn't break 1%, well, then that's just tough, but that's what people need to hear, is that America should not be going around invading countries except in self-defense if they attack us first, period.
Well, I think you should expose the current debate system for what it is, the fraud that it is, and maybe even show up in protest. Civil disobedience, I think, would really wake people up.
Yeah, I agree. The debates are key. I pay off whoever I have to pay off to get in the debates. Beyond that, it's pray. I don't know.
Keep doing what you're doing, Michael. I think you're doing everything you can do, as far as I can tell.
I think it all comes down to television, and he needs to get on as much television as possible because, last week, 40% of Americans believe that Saddam Hussein was responsible for 9/11. And that just shows you the lack of education. A lot of these people are only going to watch television. So I really see the key to the libertarian success would have more airtime on national television, get his face on the media more.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about how you would run the Libertarian Party. Meanwhile, this is Pledge Drive, and we're going to have a little break for a little pledge pitch. Be right back. All right, this is Pledge Drive. It's going to ruin the vibe. We've touched too much. But as Jason reminded us, yeah, we'll take Liberty dollars.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, let's inform some of the listeners. What are Liberty dollars?
Real quick. Arlo?
Oh, it's a solid silver-backed currency. That's how it increases value relative to the Federal Reserve. There's also certificates for it, so it's just an alternative to the banknotes.
I've seen this at liberty.org. Is that correct? LibertyDollar.org?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're Austin, Austin Silver.
Or AustinSilver.com or AustinLibertyMerchants.com.
An alternative to fiat currency. What a brilliant idea.
All right, here's a question. All right. 4 years ago, R.W. Bradford, the editor of Liberty Magazine, said that if you wanted to make the LP have an impact, what you would do is focus on one issue, and that one issue would be the drug war. If given the Libertarian Party as it is, how would you tell it to make that break? Now, take out the war on terror because it makes it too complicated. Let's go pre-9/11 for a second. Let's try to answer it this way. What would you do to make an impact? Because you have such a policy direction. Is there one way we could do it? Scott?
I don't know. I suppose the money, because that affects everybody. If you're poor, inflation hurts you because it takes forever for your wages to catch up with the rising prices. And if you're rich and you have a big bank account and all your dollars are being devalued, hurts everybody just the same. And it's destructive to have that fiat money system. That's the thing that woke me up, was understanding how the banking system works,
Patrick?
That was about the Libertarian Party, how it would run it?
Yeah.
Well, I can appreciate what they do as a party, but the more I think about it, the more it's almost a contradiction in terms for you to organize collectively to achieve individual liberty. I never really thought about it before, but until recently, I think individuals have to take back their liberty, and I don't think that it's something that you do collectively. I guess you could motivate people to take back liberty, but I don't think that winning elective office in an institution that destroys liberty is the answer to getting liberty.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I would say for the party, what they should do is distance themselves from libertarian philosophy and then mold themselves as the enemy of the federal government. And they'll attract a much wider group of people who are just opposed to the size of the federal government and not so much in tune with the whole libertarian philosophy.
Yeah, I understand the problem with the LP party turning into a collective, but if it's for the purpose of individualism, I think that will kind of cap how far that collectivism will go, and it gets attention.
This reminded me of a flyer I saw while I was in college down at Texas State in San Marcos. It said, Anarchy Club, when we meet, nowhere, what time we meet, whatever time, doesn't exist. It's like a paradox of the whole nature of the institution. We're a collection of individuals, or like, was it Will Rogers who said, or no, Groucho Marx, any club that would have you a member, I don't want to have anything to do with.
All right, this is as close as we get to a personal question on the show. What is the most radical political decision you take?
That national defense should be left up to private business. That actually Hans Hoppe at the Mises Institute. He wrote this book called The Myth of National Defense, where he points out that the purpose of national defense really is to provoke conflict, to get in it. And if you just privatize everything and have no state at all, that's actually the best way to stay out of foreign conflicts.
Well, I would advocate private businesses doing everything that the government currently does. I don't know why we can't get past this almost like thought block where everything the government currently does, it does poorly, but yet there are certain things that we presume that the government can do better than the private market. I just don't get it. I mean, they talk about roads and police and defense as if that's not touchable, but I mean everything else, most of what government touches, it screws up. So I would have everything done privately.
Yeah, I think the most radical thing that I would do is go, and this is not really radical to us, but to many I guess it is, the U.S. Constitution. I would revive it and get back to it so that we actually have a functional republic that can last throughout our lifetimes.
One venture I'd like to be a part of that I think is probably the most radical thing I would do is use an anarcho-capitalist model for security, like perhaps neighborhood security. And what this would do is not to be instead of the police, but in addition to the police, just to give the police some competition.
What I do is I basically reconstitute the authority of localities, in that if a particular city wants to legalize marijuana or wants to legalize prostitution, that they should be allowed as a city or town to make that law in their town, regardless of what the federal regulations are. So it's basically a move to give the power back, not only to the states, but to the cities and the localities. So we can have more constitutional activation within a small town that wants to follow the Constitution. And you're just subject to the laws of whatever town you're in.
That's got to happen, but it's just...
It's like the new city-state, it's like a revival of the city-state here within America. So we could all move to cities that are going to support that in this town. Like we could all move to Austin and Texas and then have the city-state of Austin have legalized marijuana or medicinal use or whatever laws,
So maybe more radical than going back to the Constitution would be going back
to
Articles of Confederation.
Exactly, reinterpret it. Because it can be interpreted as very much a city-state within a state, because the true purpose of the federal government is only to ensure national defense, not to like Department of Education. What's that all about? U.S. Department of Education?
You know when that thing was started, by the way, the Department of Education?
Was that Woodrow Wilson?
1980.
1980?
1980.
Yes,
Wow.
I thought that was when Reagan promised to abolish it.
Yeah, no, it was... Actually,
I thought it was the 50s, wasn't it?
No. Department of Education was 1980.
Yeah, he left us with a $3 trillion debt. That's growing government small, good conservative.
One of Carter's last moves. Yeah.
Scott, I know you're chomping at the bit to say something about the Constitution. Go ahead and be honest.
Well, I was just going to add in there that really forget the Constitution or the Articles of Confederation and just abolish the United States of America altogether, and just imagine the landmass between Canada and Mexico. Instead of having 50 geographical monopolies on violence, instead having 50 giant corporations that are all competing for your security business. And if you don't like the way Burns treats you, you hire Stanley Smith. And it's in their profit interest to avoid conflict. And it's only in government's interest to make sure that there's always conflict so they always have a job to do tomorrow.
I want to add to that, what's very important about the anarcho-capitalist model is that the same people who protect you, you only contract with people who also insure your property. So that way it keeps them from turning against you, because that's not in their interest.
Yes, it's a system that kind of has to be built in with checks and balances, but I do like the liberation that does create. The profit margin applied to government, the capitalist supply and demand applied to government, competing.
There's your check and balance right there.
But it's not a free market. That's still not a free market, though. It's still because I think it'll devolve to a communist system because, like you said earlier, all governments are messed up.
Well, but then it would be a government again and not anarchy anymore.
But at least there's checks and balances that they are checking each other.
What would happen, though, in that scenario if a private market decided to abrogate your rights? Would that be okay?
Well, you could hire another company to protect them from the people who were screwing you before.
And what if they all colluded to say it would be a lot more profitable for all of us if we just forgot about freedom and just made a police state?
Well, there would be other people whose interests it would... I mean, basically you're saying if you create an anarchy and it becomes a government again, then isn't it a government again? And the answer is yes. But if it's not that, then it's... If you have just private... If there's however many less than a monopoly, if there's at least a few companies competing for your security interests, then it's not a government.
It's got to be better, right?
And don't forget, Right, for individuals to bear arms is another check on top of that. People can protect themselves and not hire anybody, and I think a majority of people would do that in a libertarian society.
All right, next question. Let me ask you this. What is the most despicable position that the GOP holds?
That they're going to use American taxpayer dollars and sons' lives, and they're going to go around with high explosives, killing people in the Middle East in order to remake the entire region, to turn it into a wonderful democracy that will be our wonderful ally if you just have 30 or 50 years of patience. It's going to be great. That is the most disgusting thing that they could possibly do, and they've already killed over 30,000 civilians. So vote Republican, you jerks.
I would say the sort of the post 9/11 national security police state that Bush has been pushing through the Patriot Act and other forms of surveillance, I think, is probably the most despicable thing to liberty that I would even imagine seeing in my lifetime. And the idea that we have to destroy freedom in order to save it is just insanity to me.
Yeah, I think the warmongering, and I don't mean just Iraq, although that's bad, but the war on terror, war on drugs, war on poverty, war on you name it, is just the one knee-jerk reaction to every problem, which is let's start a war.
The only way our U.S. policy is going to work in our favor is if we commit genocide, so let's just put an end to it right now.
Recognizing the financial interest in genocide, that the military-industrial complex is basically set forth, and the Republican Party completely enables and profits and has a major relationship with all defense contractors, Halliburton, subsidiaries, and all the money that's involved. The realization that the Republican Party has been so co-opted that now it's conservative to go and do this war and grow government, and how Bush has redefined what conservatism is. If you say Republicans are conservative and you look at Bush's policy, you realize he's really an ultra-liberal, and just the way that he's created this whole information war that gets people to believe 40% of the American people and believe that Saddam Hussein did that in a media environment where that's allowed to happen. That's the biggest crime, I think.
What is the most despicable position the Democratic Party holds?
That government is here to do you a favor and protect you, and their government's here to pay your way into college, and they're here to give you health care. And the only reason that you don't like the government now is because those jerky Republicans doing it. But if us Democrats were in there, we'll take good care of you, and we're not here to protect your rights. We're here to protect you from everything and for everything.
I would probably say their look on taxation. They basically believe that there should be legal forcible theft to push their own agenda, and that troubles me.
Yeah, I'd say the same. It's the socialism, communism slant. But for whatever weird reason, it's not so much to me despicable as it is sort of sad and misguided. It's almost like they truly, honestly, sincerely believe it'll work, but we all know it won't work, but we can't convince them otherwise. So maybe not despicable, but sort of pitiful.
A combination of the income tax and the secret tax through inflation is the root of almost all of these problems. To be able to coerce money out of civilians, that's very powerful and it's very wrong.
Especially when it's backed by the power of force, which is government, which they could throw your butt in jail if you don't pay the IRS. We got to recognize government for what it is. It's an evil thing that's a necessary evil. It's not good. It's not here to take care of you. And that's the biggest thing I see with the Democratic Party, that they're making the Democratic Party think that the government's here to take care of you. It's good. Where we realize historically governments have always been bad for human life, and the less government, the better the life.
Most influential libertarian thinker?
Murray Rothbard. Sorry, guys.
Didn't
mean to steal all your thunder there.
I've read some of his stuff, but I'd say Butler Schaefer is awesome. His piece on anarchy. I did not think like an anarchist, or even think. I thought the whole idea was crazy until I actually read his piece, and I would definitely say Butler Schaefer.
Yeah, I'd say Rothbard too, with a close second for Mises and a close third for Hayek.
And I'm still investigating a lot of libertarian thinkers. Right now, I'm the most familiar with Ayn Rand, and I'm the most impressed with her. I
think the biggest effect was probably the Illuminatus trilogy on me.
Really? Okay, because you stepped all over that that later question of Atlas Shrugged or Illuminatus trilogy. But all right, what libertarian website do you go to the most? And And just be terribly blunt even if someone steps all over your answer.
I go to antiwar.com a couple times a day and make sure about all the news headlines.
Well, I guess it's a tie between Lou Rockwell and StrikeTheRoot.com. Strike the Root is really, I mean, it's even, to some degree, it's even more radical than Lou sometimes.
I go to CarryForAmerica.com. Oh, wait, sorry. I go to Reason Mag or Reason Online.
I go to ErnestHancock.com. Actually, I'm not even sure if that's the address, but I know in the search engine, if you put in Declare Your Independence, Ernest Hancock, there's a great archive of radio shows. For 2 years, he had wonderful guests on there, and it covers almost every topic.
Oh, I like 2600.com. There's a lot of some stuff out of New York City.
Are there any libertarian publications worth bothering with?
Oh, that you would like go spend money at the...
Yeah, and that's a difficult question because a lot of us have our own...
Thrasher magazine. No, there's nothing libertarian about that, really. It's individualism, though.
Magazines. No, I mean, everything that's really powerful in a libertarian perspective is out on the web, so why would I pay for it?
Yeah, I agree. Reason is sort of all out there. I also like the New American. It tends to be sort of fascist a little bit, but every once in a while they come out with a pretty good libertarian viewpoint.
Reason. The Reason magazine.
I like, I don't know, Fat Freddy's Cat and Cherry Pop-Tart, those kind of things.
Well, all right, guys, if you're not going to be... All right, is there anyone that can save the Libertarian Party?
No.
Not that I can think of.
Is Jesse Ventura available? No. No, I don't think so.
We don't know.
I don't know.
That's the wrong question. The party shouldn't be saved. It should just be made a point that's a constant, omnipresence in the minds of Americans. I guess at this point, the mission of the Libertarian Party, I believe, is not so much that we're actually going to win, but that we're going to bring new ideas to the marketplace of ideas and get people to think out of the box. We're going to make people take the red pill.
All right. Okay, before we do the major pledge pitch, one thought that you'd like to get across to the listeners: no call to action, but some statement of philosophy.
How about a call to inaction?
Do nothing. Stay home.
Let's see, not a call to action. I would just say, whenever you hear someone say, hey, these wars make us free, and every time we go to these wars, that's what makes us free. No, actually, that's what makes us not free. And every time we have a war, we lose more and more of our rights, and government gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the fewer wars we have, the more free we will be.
Okay. What?
Just one statement you want our listeners to leave with, and no calls to action.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean...
it's supposed to be one statement? Sorry.
Well, I mean, just from personal experience, I'd say that, government is the enemy of freedom. I know that's a pretty radical statement to make. A lot of people, almost have a unrealistic love of the American government, but, it's not... government is not the solution, as Ronald Reagan used to say. Government is the problem, and government is the problem most of the time. So that's pretty much it.
I'd say there's a lot of simple choices people can make, such as the Liberty Dollar. You don't have to wait 4 years for a vote. You can make a change every day with every dollar you spend. I also think people should look into the idea of approval voting, which is a type of voting, whether you're liberal, conservative, or anyone else. We should be able to go into the ballot booth and vote our approval or disapproval of every candidate on the ballot, which is what approval voting allows us to do. Instead of having one box to check, you would be able to go in on November 2nd and say, I would approve of Badnarik or Green or Cobb or Perutka, but not Kerry or Bush. And what that does is help third-party participation get much higher, much quicker, and also reflects more accurately the true will of the voters.
I think we're at a point in time where we have people debating, with Democrats debating, Republicans and Libertarians can make friends with Democrats because you can rag on Bush together, and vice versa. You can make a connection with people, and a lot of people are, when Republicans debate Democrats, they say, well, your candidate didn't do this, or yours did that. Oh, yeah, well, yours did that. With libertarians, you don't really get into that discussion. You actually can criticize them, and they can't criticize your candidate. They have to listen. They have to know your opinion. People are open-minded. They'll listen.
The average American watches a whole lot of television. And I know we're preaching to the audience right now, or the choir, because most people listening to the radio have already taken the red pill, are pretty much informed, do read the newspapers, do read alternative media. And unfortunately, all the people we need to reach are probably watching a reality show right now. So if anybody who does usually watch reality shows and you happen to be listening to the radio, I think it would be a good idea if you watched less television and found out more about the world around you, and go to the Internet, go to the independent news media sources, because they're the only sources telling you the truth now.
Matrix is government.
All right. Guys, I want to thank Scott Horton, Patrick Sovereign, Jason Pratt, Arlo Pignotti, and Gabo Delasumthin. This has been the Liberated Space Pledge Drive edition, and I have to say, KOP now concludes its broadcast today. Co-op is licensed to the Board of Directors of Texas Educational Broadcasting Incorporated by the FCC. We broadcast at 91.7 megahertz with an effective radiant power of 3,000 watts. Power to the individual, indict the tank drivers.